My name is Ashley Frazier. I'm 35 years old. And this is the story of how my wedding day became the day. The morning of my wedding day began like a dream I had been waiting for all my life. The air felt different that day, light and full of promise, as if the universe was whispering that something beautiful was finally about to happen for me. I remember standing by my bedroom window, watching the sunlight dance across the curtains, my heart fluttering with excitement and nerves. I had spent months planning every little detail, the flowers, the music, the soft pastel colors I'd always imagined walking down the aisle in. It wasn't about perfection, it was about finally feeling seen, chosen, and loved. For once in my life, it felt like everything was falling into place. I smiled at myself in the mirror and whispered softly, "You made it, Ashley." Then my phone buzzed. Just a simple vibration on the table, nothing dramatic. Yet somehow, I felt a sudden weight in my chest even before I read the message. It was from my mother. 6 words. "Don't expect anyone to come." That was it. No greeting, no reason, no emotion. Just those words, sharp and cold like ice pressed against my heart. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, unable to breathe, trying to make sense of it. Maybe she meant they'd be late. Maybe there had been some misunderstanding, a delay, a change of plans. I wanted so desperately to believe that. But deep down, I knew exactly what it meant, and that familiar ache I had carried my whole life came rushing back like a wave I thought I'd finally escaped. My hands trembled as I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my robe, surrounded by makeup brushes and wedding notes. That message wasn't just about today. It carried years of silence, judgment, and distance. It reminded me of every birthday they forgot, every school event they skipped, every time I'd been made to feel like I was somehow not enough. My mother had always had a way of reminding me where I stood in her world, on the outside. I was the middle child, the quiet one, the one who didn't shine enough to be noticed. My brother was her pride, my sister her mirror, and I was the shadow between them. That morning, I realized nothing had changed. The tears came slowly at first, quiet and contained, but soon they wouldn't stop. My makeup artist, who was supposed to start working on me at 8, gently knocked on the door, asking if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine, just emotional. Every bride is, right? But inside, something broke. I looked at my phone again, reading those 6 words over and over. Don't expect anyone to come. It wasn't just about them not being there. It was the final confirmation that all these years of trying, all those attempts to belong, had been one-sided. I had always been the one reaching, never the one being reached for. Still, part of me wanted to call her, to ask why, to beg even. But another part, the quieter, stronger part, told me not to. That part had waited its whole life for this day, not because of who wasn't coming, but because of who was. Ethan was waiting for me. The man who had seen me, loved me, and made me believe I was worthy of happiness. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and whispered, "It's your day, Ashley. Don't let them take this too." As I stood there, the weight of that message still heavy in my heart, I realized something powerful. I had spent my whole life waiting for my family to show up for me, but maybe this was the day I finally showed up for myself. Their absence hurt, yes, but it also gave me clarity. I understood then that love isn't proven by attendance, it's proven by presence, and that day, I chose to be fully present for my own happiness. My mother's words may have been cruel, but they became the spark that made me stand taller, stronger, and more certain of who I was. And as I finally slipped into my wedding dress, I knew that even if no one from my family came, I would still walk down that aisle with grace, because I had already survived far worse. Growing up in my family always felt like living inside a picture frame where I didn't quite belong. Everything looked perfect from the outside, the smiling family photos, the neat house, the birthday parties with balloons and cake, but inside, it was different. I was the middle child, the one who somehow blended into the background. My brother, Jake, was the golden one, captain of the football team, loud and charming. My sister, Lauren, was the pretty one, the one my mother always bragged about. And then there was me, Ashley, the quiet, bookish one who spent more time writing stories in her notebook than talking to anyone. No one ever said it outright, but I knew it. I was the extra one, the one they didn't quite know what to do with. I learned early on that attention in our house had to be earned, and I wasn't very good at competing. When I got straight A's, my mom would just nod and say, "That's what you're supposed to do." When my brother scored a touchdown, the whole house erupted with applause and cheers. When my sister got ready for a school dance, Mom would help her pick out dresses for hours. But when I asked for help or tried to share something that mattered to me, I'd get a distracted, "Maybe later, honey." Later never really came. My father was kind in his own distant way, but he never interfered. He worked long hours and often said, "You know how your mother is," as if that excused everything. But it didn't. It just made me feel smaller, like I was the only one who saw how cold things really were. The hardest part wasn't being ignored, it was pretending it didn't hurt. I became good at pretending. I learned to laugh when they laughed, to disappear when tension filled the room, to keep my voice soft so I wouldn't disturb anyone. School became my refuge. Books became my escape. I'd spend hours reading stories about people who found love, acceptance, and family in unexpected places. Sometimes I'd imagine being one of them, someone chosen, someone loved not because they were perfect, but because they were enough. But every time I went home, reality came crashing back. I remember one Christmas when I was 15. My mother bought expensive gifts for Jake and Lauren, the new phone, the designer shoes. I got a sweater 2 sizes too big, with the tag still on it from the clearance rack. She smiled and said, "It's practical. You'll grow into it." I smiled back, but that night I cried into my pillow until my chest ached. I wasn't growing into anything. I was just fading into the background of my own family. The emotional distance never softened, not even as I got older. When I went to college, no one helped me move into my dorm. My mother said she was busy with Lauren's engagement party, and my dad just sent me $50 to get something nice. I remember standing in that empty dorm room, surrounded by boxes, realizing that no one was coming. It was a painful pattern that kept repeating: birthdays, graduations, holidays, all moments that should have been shared, but never were. Each absence chipped away at me, but it also started shaping me into someone stronger. I learned to stop expecting grand gestures or warm hugs. I learned to rely on myself, even when it was lonely. Looking back now, I think the hardest part wasn't their cruelty, it was their indifference. Indifference hurts more than anger because at least anger means you matter enough to be noticed. But I was never noticed. I was tolerated. And when my mother texted me on my wedding day, "Don't expect anyone to come," it wasn't a surprise. It was the final confirmation of what I had always known. For 35 years, I had been waiting for them to choose me, and they never did. But that realization, as painful as it was, became the beginning of my freedom. Because once I stopped chasing the love that was never coming, I began to see the people who were already offering it, the ones who showed up, who stayed, who listened. That's the truth I carried with me down the aisle, that family isn't about blood, it's about presence. And even though my childhood was filled with absence, I walked forward that day knowing I would never repeat that story again. I met Ethan when I wasn't even looking for love. To be honest, at that point in my life, I had already convinced myself that love was something that happened to other people. I was 29, living in a small apartment, working long hours, and spending weekends with books and coffee instead of parties and people. I didn't mind the quiet. It was safe. I had been hurt too many times by people who claimed to care, only to disappear when I needed them most. I wasn't bitter, but I was tired. Tired of hoping, tired of waiting to be seen. Then one morning, on my way to work, the universe decided to change everything. My car broke down at a gas station, and as I stood there frustrated, half late and half embarrassed, a man approached me. He wasn't pushy or overconfident, just kind. "You look like you could use a hand," he said with a smile that was both gentle and sure. That was Ethan. He didn't just fix my flat tire that day, he fixed something in me that had been broken for years, the belief that kindness was real and not something you had to earn. He didn't ask for my number right away, didn't make me uncomfortable. He just helped, smiled, and said, "Take care of yourself, Ashley." I remember thinking how rare it was for someone to see me without wanting something in return. A week later, I ran into him again, this time at the local bookstore. He was in the philosophy section, flipping through a book he admitted he didn't understand but was trying to look smart. We laughed, and that laughter felt easy, effortless, like it had been waiting for years to escape. That day turned into coffee, and coffee turned into late-night conversations about everything: dreams, fears, the meaning of love, and the pain of growing up unseen. I told him things I'd never told anyone, about my mother's coldness, my family's absence, the feeling of never being enough. He listened without judgment, without trying to fix me. He just said softly, "You didn't deserve that." And for some reason, hearing those words from him made me cry. Ethan didn't try to fill my silences with empty reassurances. He gave them space, honored them. He made me laugh when I forgot how to, and he made me feel safe in ways I didn't even know I needed. He once told me, "Love isn't about proving yourself. It's about being seen and still being chosen." Those words became a kind of promise between us. With him, I didn't have to earn love by performing or pleasing. I could simply exist, and that was enough. When he proposed, it wasn't some grand spectacle. It was a quiet evening by the lake where we'd often gone to talk and dream. The sun was setting, painting the water gold. He took my hand, looked at me like I was the only person in the world, and said, "Ashley, you've spent your whole life being strong on your own. Let me be strong with you." I couldn't even speak. I just cried and nodded because I knew this was what real love felt like. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was steady, honest, and safe. Ethan gave me something I'd never had: consistency. He called when he said he would, he showed up when it mattered, and he stayed even when I tried to push him away out of old fear. Slowly, he became my safe place, the home I never had growing up. He taught me that love isn't supposed to make you question your worth, it's supposed to remind you of it. By the time we started planning our wedding, I thought maybe, finally, life was giving me my happy ending. I believed that this time love wouldn't be conditional, that this time I'd have my family beside me, both the one I was born into and the one I was building. I couldn't have known then that their absence would still come to haunt that day. But even when that happened, it was Ethan who held me, not with pity, but with strength. And in his arms, I realized that maybe, just maybe, the love I'd spent my whole life searching for had found me instead. The morning of my wedding felt surreal. The kind of day you imagine as a little girl, filled with soft laughter, flowers, and love in the air. The sky was clear, the breeze gentle, and my heart was pounding with both excitement and nerves. I remember standing in front of the mirror in my white gown, the one I had chosen so carefully. It wasn't extravagant, just simple and elegant, exactly what I'd always wanted. My best friend, Lisa, helped adjust the veil, and she said, "You look like a dream, Ashley." I smiled, trying to let myself feel it. But deep inside, a part of me kept glancing at my phone, hoping for a text that never came. My mother's message from earlier, "Don't expect anyone to come," still echoed in my mind like a cruel whisper. I told myself it didn't matter, that today was about me and Ethan. But no matter how much I tried to push it away, the emptiness sat quietly in the back of my heart. When the music began, my chest tightened. The sound of the piano filled the small chapel, and everyone stood, turning to watch me walk down the aisle. For a moment, time slowed. I could see Ethan at the end, his eyes shining, his smile full of love and patience. That should have been enough to drown out every other thought. But as I took each step forward, my gaze drifted to the seats that were supposed to be filled by my family, and they were empty. Row after row, nothing but vacant chairs where my parents, my siblings, my relatives should have been. The sight hit me like a punch. It wasn't just disappointment, it was confirmation. The little girl in me who had always begged for their attention suddenly realized they were never coming, not just to the wedding, but into my life. The guests whispered softly, some glancing at the empty row with awkward sympathy. I tried to keep my head high, to smile, to pretend it didn't hurt. But inside, I was breaking. I could feel tears threatening to spill, and I bit my lip to keep them back. Lisa, who stood by my side as maid of honor, reached out and gave my hand a quick squeeze, her eyes saying everything words couldn't. I nodded faintly, taking a shaky breath, reminding myself of Ethan's face at the altar, the one person who had chosen me without question. That thought kept me moving forward. When I finally reached him, he looked into my eyes as if he could see every bit of pain I was hiding. He didn't say a word, just gently brushed his thumb against my hand, grounding me. The ceremony began, and as the vows were read, I tried to stay present. But there was a lump in my throat I couldn't swallow, and a quiet ache in my chest that no amount of joy could erase. I dreamed of this day being the moment my family would finally see me happy, maybe even proud. Instead, they weren't even there to witness it. After the ceremony, everyone congratulated us, music played, and laughter filled the room. I smiled for photos, danced, and tried to hold on to the happiness of marrying the man I loved. But when I stepped away for a moment and looked around the hall, that same row of empty seats stared back at me, silent reminders of all the years I had spent longing for love from people who couldn't give it. The truth settled heavily in my heart. It wasn't that they had forgotten, it was that they had chosen not to come. That night, as I sat in my bridal suite, dress still on, makeup fading, I stared at my reflection and whispered, "You did it." Not in celebration, but in strength. Because despite the pain, despite the loneliness, I had walked down that aisle alone and said, "I do," to someone who truly saw me. The empty seats didn't define my day, they revealed the truth I had been running from. I had spent years waiting for my family to show up for me, and they didn't. But I did. I showed up for myself, and that was something they could never take away from me. After the ceremony, the laughter faded, the music quieted, and the guests slowly drifted away into the night. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, yet when the last guest left and the lights dimmed, the silence in that room felt heavier than ever. I sat alone in the bridal suite, still in my white dress, the hem slightly wrinkled from dancing, my makeup smudged, my bouquet wilted on the table beside me. Ethan had gone to check on something with the staff, and for the first time that day, I had a moment to breathe, and to feel everything I had been holding back. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, not sure why I even wanted to look at it. Maybe some part of me still believed that my mother would text me, even something small, like, "Hope it went well." But deep down, I already knew what I'd find, or what I wouldn't. When I unlocked the screen, the first thing that popped up wasn't a message, but a notification from social media. My sister, Lauren, had posted a new photo. I hesitated before tapping it, but curiosity, or maybe pain, got the better of me. And there it was. A perfect, sunlit picture of my entire family. My mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, my cousins, all of them, standing together on a private beach in Maui, wearing matching white outfits, laughing, glowing in the golden light. The caption read, "Finally together." My heart stopped. I stared at it, waiting for my brain to catch up, but it couldn't. I kept reading the comments, one after another, each one feeling like a small stab to the heart. "So beautiful. The whole family. This makes me so happy. No one missing." And then my sister replied, "Nope, perfect timing. Perfect timing." The words echoed in my mind like thunder. My wedding day, the day I had begged them to come to, the day I had dreamed of sharing with them, and they were on a beach, laughing, toasting, posing for pictures as if nothing else existed. I felt the air leave my lungs. The room started to spin, my chest tightening, my throat burning as tears finally escaped the corners of my eyes. They hadn't forgotten. They hadn't made a mistake. They had chosen. They had chosen the beach over me. I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at that photo. I wanted to scream, to cry out, to ask why. Why wasn't I worth showing up for? What had I done to deserve being excluded like this, again and again? But the truth was, I already knew. My family had never seen me as part of their picture. I had been edited out of their lives long before that day. I just hadn't wanted to see it. That photo wasn't the betrayal. It was the evidence. When Ethan returned, I quickly wiped my tears, but he could tell. He gently sat beside me, his hand resting on mine, and asked softly, "What happened?" I couldn't speak. I just turned the phone toward him. He looked at it for a few seconds, then sighed and said, "I'm so sorry, Ash." His voice was calm, but filled with hurt for me. I shook my head, forcing a smile through the pain, and whispered, "It's okay. It's perfect timing." He looked at me, puzzled, but I meant it. Maybe not in that exact moment, but deep down, I understood something had just ended, and something else had begun. I wasn't going to chase them anymore. I wasn't going to beg for love that had to be bought with pain. That night, as I took off my wedding dress, I felt a strange kind of peace under all the sadness. I realized that their absence wasn't my failure. It was their choice. And maybe, just maybe, it was the universe's way of showing me exactly who belonged in my life. That night, I stopped waiting for them to show up. I stopped imagining myself in their perfect pictures. Because while they were posing in Maui, I was standing in the quiet truth of my own life, loved, chosen, and free. For the first time, I didn't need their approval to feel whole. The photo that broke me also woke me up. It showed me that I didn't need to be in their frame anymore. I could create my own. And this time, it would only include people who truly saw me. After staring at that picture for what felt like hours, my mind went completely blank. The photo of my entire family laughing together in Maui was still glowing on my phone screen, like a cruel reminder of where I stood in their world, or rather, where I didn't. I couldn't even cry anymore. The tears had dried on my cheeks, leaving only a dull ache behind. My heart felt hollow, and my hands were shaking, not from anger, but from disbelief. It wasn't just the fact that they didn't come, it was that they had been celebrating while I was walking down the aisle, alone. They had replaced my wedding day with a family vacation. That realization hit me harder than anything I'd ever felt before. I kept rereading the caption under that photo, "Finally together," and those two words, "perfect timing," written in the comments, almost felt like they were mocking me. But then, something inside me shifted. I had spent my entire life reacting to their choices, crying, explaining, apologizing, shrinking myself just to be accepted. And suddenly, I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to explain, or justify, or plead. I was tired. So instead, I opened my family group chat, the one that had been quiet for weeks except for the occasional vacation photo or casual update. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long moment, then typed 2 words, "Perfect timing." That was it. No explanations, no anger, no pain. Just those 2 words. I pressed send and placed the phone face down on the table. My hands stopped trembling. For the first time that day, I felt strangely calm. It wasn't about revenge or trying to make them feel guilty. It was about acceptance. Those 2 words carried everything I'd never said out loud, every disappointment, every moment I'd been invisible, every time I'd hoped they would choose me and they didn't. It was my quiet way of saying, "I see it now." Ethan walked into the room just as I exhaled deeply, as if I had released something I'd been carrying for years. He asked softly, "Are you okay?" And I nodded, whispering, "I think I finally am." He didn't press for details. He didn't need to. He knew that whatever battle I had fought in that moment, it had been a long one. He just wrapped his arms around me, and for the first time that day, I let myself melt into someone's embrace, not as a broken person, but as someone finally done fighting for love that should have been hers all along. That night, we didn't talk much. We sat on the balcony of our small honeymoon suite, the night sky stretching endlessly above us. The world felt quiet, peaceful, and honest. I remember looking up at the stars and thinking how different this peace felt. Not the temporary kind that comes from pretending everything's okay, but the real kind that comes after you stop running. I realized that by sending that one message, I had closed a chapter that had been hurting me for years. In the following days, I didn't receive a single response from them. No call, no text, nothing. And surprisingly, that silence didn't break me, it freed me. I stopped waiting for their apologies or their explanations. I stopped checking my phone, stopped imagining scenarios where they'd show up at my door. Instead, I started focusing on what I had: a husband who loved me deeply, friends who supported me, and a future I could finally build without waiting for permission. That text, perfect timing, became a turning point in my life. It wasn't just about that night, it was about everything that came before it. It was me finally drawing a boundary, silently declaring that I would no longer let people hurt me just because they were family. It was my goodbye, not to them, but to the version of myself that kept begging to be chosen. When I look back on that moment now, I realize those two words carried more power than any long confrontation ever could. They were simple, but they said everything. You made your choice, and I've made mine. That night, I didn't lose a family. I lost the illusion of one. And in its place, I found something much stronger: my peace. In the weeks that followed my wedding, the silence from my family remained exactly as I had expected: heavy, unbroken, and strangely peaceful. At first, I thought it would bother me, that I would wake up every morning reaching for my phone, hoping for some sign of regret or a simple, "We're sorry." But that message never came. Instead, something unexpected began to grow inside me: peace. It wasn't immediate. It came slowly, like the way dawn creeps into a dark room, a little light at a time. I stopped asking myself why. For so many years, that single word had haunted me. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they care? Why couldn't they love me the way I needed? But one morning, as I was drinking coffee on our balcony, watching the soft sunlight fall over the city, I realized the answer had always been the same. It was never about me. Their choices, their distance, their coldness, none of it defined my worth. It reflected their capacity to love, not mine to deserve it. That realization hit me like a wave of relief. Ethan was patient with me during that time. He never pushed, never told me to move on. Instead, he listened, really listened. There were nights when I cried for the little girl in me who kept waiting at the window for her mom to show up at school plays, who smiled extra wide at family dinners hoping someone would notice, who worked hard to be good enough but never felt seen. I grieved for her, because she deserved so much better. And through those tears, I began to forgive, not just them, but myself, for holding on for so long. Forgiveness didn't come with a grand gesture. It came quietly. It came when I stopped wishing for their approval. It came when I saw my reflection one morning and finally didn't feel small. It came when I realized that the love I had been chasing all my life was already standing beside me, looking at me with kindness every day. Ethan wasn't trying to fix me. He was simply reminding me that I wasn't broken. As months went by, I started to understand something deeper. Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by presence. It's the people who show up, who stay when it's hard, who see you when no one else does. It's the friend who calls just to check in, the neighbor who brings soup when you're sick, the partner who holds your hand through your healing. Those were my people now. That was my real family. One evening, I got a message from an unknown number. It was my cousin. She sent a short text. "I saw your wedding pictures. You looked beautiful. I'm sorry." For a moment, I felt that old ache rise again, but then I smiled and replied, "Thank you. I'm happy now." And I meant it. I didn't need explanations anymore. I didn't need to reopen wounds that had already begun to heal. Looking back, I realized that my family's absence on my wedding day was not a curse, it was clarity. Their silence was my freedom. For the first time, I stopped living to be chosen and started living as if I already was. I learned that peace doesn't always come from fixing broken relationships. Sometimes it comes from accepting that some people were never meant to stay. Now, every time I think of that night, I don't feel bitterness. I feel gratitude. Because in their absence, I found myself. In their rejection, I discovered my resilience. And in their silence, I finally heard my own voice, strong, calm, and sure. Life has a way of closing doors we never had the courage to shut ourselves. My family's decision hurt deeply, but it also released me. I no longer chase what I deserve to attract. And when I think of those 2 words I sent, perfect timing, I realize they were more than just a message. They were a prophecy. That moment wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my peace, my truth, and my freedom. True family isn't defined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and presence. Sometimes losing those who never valued you is not a tragedy, it's freedom. When you stop chasing acceptance from others, you finally make room for peace, self-worth, and the people who genuinely choose you. I realized family isn't always made of blood. Sometimes, it's made of love, loyalty, and truth.